let's dive into something pretty fascinating today. We're going to be looking at the so-called immortal jellyfish,
Wow.
Turritopsis Dohrnii.
Sounds pretty exciting.
And we are going to be using an article from the Natural History Museum. It's called Immortal Jellyfish: The Secret to Cheating Death. Have you heard of this thing?
I have. It's a pretty remarkable creature.
Yeah. A jellyfish that can essentially rewind its life.
Yeah, the concept of immortality is always intriguing.
Right.
But when you see it in an animal like a jellyfish, which you wouldn't typically associate with living a long life, it's especially captivating.
Right. Okay, so first, maybe give us a sense of a typical jellyfish life cycle.
Sure. So most jellyfish start their lives as eggs and sperm,
Okay.
which combine to create a free-swimming larva. And eventually, this larva settles on a solid surface and develops into a polyp. It's kind of like a tiny sea anemone.
Okay.
And from this polyp, buds of young jellyfish, or medusae, form. And those medusae then bud off and start swimming freely.
And that's what we think of when we think of a jellyfish.
Right, those bell-shaped creatures with tentacles
Okay.
drifting through the water.
Right.
But it's important to remember that jellyfish, despite their sometimes ethereal appearance,
Yeah.
are still animals, and they're subject to the same cycle of life and death as any other creature.
Right. So now let's talk about Turritopsis Dohrnii.
Okay.
This tiny little guy, smaller than your fingernail.
Amazing, huh?
It's incredible what this thing can do.
Yeah. So when T. Dohrnii faces any kind of stress, whether it's injury, lack of food, or some other environmental change, it undergoes this unbelievable transformation.
What happens?
It basically shrinks.
Yeah.
It reabsorbs its tentacles and becomes a cyst, almost like a little blob.
It turns into a blob.
Essentially, yeah. But the really wild part is what happens next.
Okay.
Within about 36 hours,
All
that
right.
blob develops into a brand new polyp.
Oh, wow.
So remember, the polyp is an earlier stage in the jellyfish's life cycle.
Right.
It's as if it's found a way to reverse its biological clock.
So instead of dying, it just becomes younger.
Right. And that's where the whole immortal nickname comes from.
How does it even do that? Like, what's the science behind it?
So the process is called transdifferentiation.
Transdifferentiation.
And it's actually pretty rare in the animal kingdom. It's like if your skin cells could suddenly transform into heart cells to heal a wound or something.
Wow.
That's essentially what's happening here. The specialized cells of the medusa reprogram themselves to become polyp cells, and it completely reorganizes its body.
Wow. So this isn't like regrowing a tentacle. This is like a total rebuild.
Exactly. A complete self-rebuild, but younger.
That's wild. Was the discovery of this like this big scientific breakthrough moment?
Actually, it was discovered completely by accident.
What?
Yeah. Back in the 1980s,
Oh.
some students were studying Turritopsis polyps in a lab. They were expecting them to grow into medusae, reproduce, and then die. But when they checked back, they found new polyps that shouldn't have been there.
So they accidentally stumbled upon a species that seems to have figured out how to, like, rewind its own life?
Yeah, pretty much.
That's so cool. Okay. But is this jellyfish actually immortal? Can it really live forever?
Well, that's where the idea of immortality gets a bit tricky. While T. Dohrnii can rejuvenate itself, it's not invincible. It's still an animal.
Right.
And it can be eaten by predators like fish or sea turtles.
Okay. Yeah.
And even the polyps themselves can be vulnerable to things like sea slugs or crustaceans.
So it's like potentially immortal if nothing eats it.
Yeah. It's more like it has the potential to avoid death from old age.
Okay. But is it possible to study how long they can actually live?
Studying their lifespan in the wild is incredibly difficult. They're tiny and they
Yeah.
drift around in the ocean. But there have been some fascinating attempts to study them in a lab setting.
Oh, really?
Yeah, one scientist in particular,
Who's that?
Shin Kubota, he's dedicated years to studying T. Dohrnii.
Wow.
He's been keeping colonies alive in his lab since the 1990s, carefully observing them as they go through these rejuvenation cycles.
Wow. I bet that takes a lot of work.
It's meticulous work. He has to make sure they have the right conditions, the right food. He even has to slice up brine shrimp eggs under a microscope to make them small enough for these tiny jellyfish to eat.
That is dedication.
It is. But it's given us some incredible insights into just how many times these jellyfish can reset themselves.
What have they found out?
Well, in one study, Kubota observed these jellyfish rejuvenating themselves up to 10 times over a 2-year period.
Wow, that's amazing.
Sometimes at intervals of just a month.
It's like they're constantly hitting the reset button.
Right. It's evidence of their remarkable ability to essentially turn back the clock on aging.
Wow. So we've got a jellyfish that can potentially live forever as long as nothing eats it. It was discovered by accident.
Yeah.
And one scientist has dedicated his life to figuring out how it works. But this tiny jellyfish isn't just hanging out in a lab, is it?
No, it's not. In fact, T. dohrnii has spread from its original home in the Mediterranean to oceans all over the world.
How did that happen? Did they, swim across the ocean?
It's unlikely they swam that far. The most likely explanation is that they hitched rides on ships.
Seriously?
Yeah, in the ballast water. Ships take on and release huge amounts of water to maintain stability.
Okay.
And it's thought that T. dohrnii probably gets swept up in that process.
Oh, wow.
And remember how they can revert back to a polyp stage when they're stressed?
Right. Yeah.
Well, that makes them incredibly resilient travelers.
Like tiny little hitchhikers.
Yeah, they can survive long journeys, even in less than ideal conditions.
So we've helped them spread around the world, basically.
It seems that way, and it's a reminder of how interconnected our world is.
Yeah.
And how human activities can have unintended consequences, even on something as small as a jellyfish.
Right. Is this like an immortal jellyfish invasion?
Well, so far, T. dohrnii hasn't caused any major ecological harm that we know of.
Okay.
But it's a good example of how we need to be mindful of our impact on the environment.
Absolutely. So this tiny jellyfish that can potentially live forever, that can rewind its life, it's spreading all over the globe.
Right.
But it doesn't even always look the same.
Oh, that's right. There's actually quite a bit of variation in T. dohrnii depending on where it's found.
Like what?
Well, for instance, the ones in tropical regions like Panama, they only have about 8 tentacles.
Okay.
But the ones found in temperate waters like the Mediterranean or Japan, they can have 24 or more tentacles.
What? Why is that?
We're not entirely sure why there's so much variation. It's one of the many mysteries surrounding this fascinating creature.
Okay, so let's recap what we know about T. dohrnii. What are the key takeaways here?
Okay, so first of all, while it's nicknamed the immortal jellyfish,
Right.
it's not actually invincible.
Right.
It can still be eaten by predators or succumb to environmental threats.
Yeah.
Its immortality comes from its amazing ability to rejuvenate, to basically rewind its own development. And that happens through this process called transdifferentiation, where its cells are reprogrammed to become other types of cells.
Like a cellular makeover.
You could say that, and this allows it to revert back to a younger stage in its life cycle.
Okay. And we've also learned that this fascinating creature has spread across the globe.
Yep.
Probably helped by human activities.
Most likely.
And while it hasn't caused any major ecological problems so far,
not that we know of,
it serves as a good reminder of how our actions can impact even the smallest and seemingly insignificant species.
Exactly. It's a powerful example of the interconnectedness of life on Earth.
It really is. Okay, so we know that T. dohrnii can rejuvenate itself. But if it can essentially reverse its own aging, does it actually experience aging at all?
That's a great question, and it's one that scientists are still debating.
Okay.
We know that it can rejuvenate, but we don't know for sure whether it completely avoids aging or if it simply resets the aging process every time it reverts back to a polyp.
Okay.
Some scientists believe that there might be subtle signs of aging that accumulate over time, even in these jellyfish. So it may not be a question of if they age, but how they age and how that rejuvenation process impacts that aging.
That's a really interesting thought. So even the immortal jellyfish might not be entirely immune to the effects of time. Wow, this is really making me think. The immortal jellyfish is like a living puzzle, challenging our understanding of life, death, and what it even means to age. It makes you wonder if there are other creatures out there with similar abilities, hidden away in the vastness of the ocean, or maybe even in our own backyards.
It's definitely a possibility. And while T. dohrnii might be the most famous example, it's not alone. There are other species like certain types of worms and sea anemones that also have impressive regenerative capabilities.
So it's not just a jellyfish thing. There's a whole world of regenerative wonders out there.
Absolutely. And who knows what we might discover next.
What could we learn from these creatures? How might their secrets change our understanding of biology and medicine?
The potential is enormous. By studying these organisms, we could gain insights into cell growth, differentiation, regeneration. It could lead to breakthroughs in treating diseases, repairing injuries, and maybe even extending human lifespans.
So, we could potentially harness the power of regeneration to heal Damage organs, reverse aging, or even regrow lost limbs.
It might sound like science fiction right now,
Yep.
but research on creatures like T. Dohrnii suggests that these possibilities might not be as far-fetched as we once thought.
That's incredible.
It is, and it underscores the importance of continued research, exploration, and conservation.
Right.
We need to protect biodiversity, not just for the sake of the planet, but also for the sake of our own future.
Absolutely. It's like we're on this giant treasure hunt, but instead of gold and jewels, we're searching for the secrets of life itself.
And the immortal jellyfish, with its incredible ability to seemingly cheat death, is one of the most fascinating treasures we've found so far.
Well said. It's a powerful example of just how creative and resilient life can be. And it makes you wonder, what other wonders are still out there, just waiting to be discovered?
There's so much more to learn, so much more to explore, and that's what makes science so exciting. The pursuit of knowledge is perhaps the most immortal endeavor of all.
That's a beautiful thought. The immortal jellyfish, a tiny creature with the potential to change our understanding of life itself.
It's a reminder that nature is full of surprises.
And even death might not be the end of the story.
Who knows what other secrets are out there waiting to be unlocked?
It's an exciting time to be alive, a time of incredible discovery and innovation. And the immortal jellyfish is a shining example of that. It shows us that there's always more to learn, more to explore, and that the pursuit of knowledge is perhaps the most immortal endeavor of all.
It really is. So keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep diving deep into the wonders of the world around you. You never know what incredible discoveries you might make.
Well said. Until next time, keep your curiosity alive and never stop wondering.
It really is fascinating, and it makes you wonder if this tiny jellyfish can turn back time on its own development. What could that mean for us? Could we learn to tap into similar regenerative processes in humans?
That's a question that has captured the imaginations of scientists and sci-fi fans for years. But before we get too carried away with dreams of immortality, let's stick with what we know about T. Dohrnii. We've been talking about this incredible rejuvenation process, but it doesn't just happen all the time, does it?
Right. It's not like T. Dohrnii reaches a certain age and decides, okay, time to rejuvenate. It seems to be triggered by specific events, primarily stress or damage.
So they have this incredible ability to hit the reset button on their lives, but they only use it when they absolutely have to. What kind of things are we talking about here? What prompts T. Dohrnii to decide it's time to turn back the clock?
Well, that's one of the big mysteries that researchers are still trying to unravel. It seems there isn't just one single trigger, but rather a complex interplay of factors. Some scientists believe environmental changes could play a role, like shifts in water temperature or salinity. Others think physical damage or even the presence of predators might be a trigger. It's likely a combination of things, and figuring out exactly what prompts this transformation is a key area of ongoing research.
So it's a lot more complicated than just reaching a certain age and deciding it's time for a makeover. But it makes you wonder, if we could understand those signals in T. Dohrnii, could we potentially unlock similar regenerative powers in humans? Imagine being able to regenerate damaged tissue or reverse the effects of aging.
While the idea of human immortality might still be in the realm of science fiction, for now studying T. Dohrnii and its remarkable capabilities could give us valuable clues about cellular reprogramming and regeneration. And some scientists are already exploring those possibilities in the field of regenerative medicine, looking for ways to encourage cells to change their function and repair damaged tissue.
So maybe we're not going to be living forever like Highlanders anytime soon, but the research on this tiny jellyfish could pave the way for some incredible breakthroughs in treating diseases and injuries. It's amazing to think that even the smallest, seemingly insignificant creatures can hold secrets with huge potential for improving human health and well-being.
Exactly. And it really highlights how crucial biodiversity is and why we need to protect even the most unassuming species. We never know where the next big scientific discovery is going to come from.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that we need to be good stewards of our planet and all its inhabitants, not just for the sake of the environment, but for our own future as well. But getting back to our tiny, immortal friend, there's one thing we haven't touched on yet. Its diet. What does T. Dohrnii eat to fuel these incredible abilities?
Well, like a lot of jellyfish, T. Dohrnii is a carnivore. Its main food sources are tiny organisms like plankton, small crustaceans, and sometimes even fish larvae. They use their tentacles, which are armed with stinging cells, to capture their prey, and then they transport it to their mouth for digestion.
So it's this microscopic predator, silently stalking its prey in the vast ocean. It's pretty amazing that such a tiny creature with the ability to reverse its aging relies on such a seemingly simple diet.
It is, and it really speaks to how nature often finds these elegant solutions to complex problems. And that elegance is also evident in how T. Dohrnii has adapted to survive in such a diverse range of environments, from the warm waters of the tropics to the cooler depths of temperate oceans.
And as we talked about earlier, its presence in these diverse environments is likely due, at least in part, to human activities like shipping. It makes you think about the impact we have on the natural world, even when we're not necessarily trying to change things. Our actions can have ripple effects that we might not even realize. We're constantly altering the balance of nature, introducing species to new environments, and it's important to think about the potential consequences.
I completely agree. The story of T. Dohrnii is a reminder that everything is interconnected and that we have a responsibility to be careful stewards of our planet.
We can't just assume that our actions won't have consequences, especially when it comes to delicate ecosystems. But it's not all doom and gloom. As we've seen, the study of T. Dohrnii also offers a lot of hope, the possibility of new discoveries that could benefit human health and well-being in amazing ways.
Absolutely. It's a testament to the power of scientific curiosity and the incredible value of exploring the natural world, even its tiniest inhabitants.
So we've covered a lot about this immortal jellyfish, its life cycle, that amazing ability to rejuvenate, its global spread, even what it eats. We've talked about the potential benefits of understanding its unique powers and about taking care of our planet. But there's one question that keeps coming back to me. If T. Dohrnii can essentially rewind its own aging, does it even experience aging at all? Do we see any of the signs of aging that we see in other organisms?
That's a great question, and it's one that scientists are still debating. While we know that it can rejuvenate itself, we don't know for sure if it avoids aging altogether or just resets the aging process when it goes back to being a polyp. Some researchers think there might be some very subtle signs of aging that build up over time, even in these jellyfish.
So even the immortal jellyfish might not be completely immune to time. It might not be a question of if they age, but how they age, and what role that rejuvenation process plays. It's a complex puzzle that scientists are still working on, and who knows what we might discover as they learn more.
Exactly. And that's part of what makes studying T. Dohrnii so fascinating. It challenges our ideas about what's possible and opens up whole new ways of thinking about aging and regeneration.
It's a reminder that nature is full of surprises, and that even the tiniest creatures can hold secrets that could change how we understand life itself. It really makes you wonder if there are other creatures out there, right? Maybe even right under our noses, that have these amazing regenerative abilities. It just kind of changes how you look at the world, doesn't it?
It does. You know, we tend to focus on the big, flashy animals, but sometimes the most incredible discoveries come from studying the smallest, most unassuming creatures.
Yeah, it's true. We shouldn't judge a book by its cover or a jellyfish by its size. So we've been talking about this immortal jellyfish and how it can kind of rewind its own life. But is there anything we can actually do with that knowledge? Can understanding this jellyfish really help humans in some way?
That's a really important question. And a lot of research is focused on exactly that. Of course, we're not going to be reversing our own aging anytime soon, but there are some areas where T. Dohrnii's unique abilities could have a real impact. Scientists are really interested in that transdifferentiation process, trying to figure out how it works and if we could maybe replicate it or stimulate it in human cells.
So you're saying there's a chance we could reprogram our own cells, like to fix damage or even reverse the effects of aging?
That's the ultimate goal. Think about it. What if we could treat things like heart disease, Alzheimer's, spinal cord injuries? If we could unlock the secrets of T. Dohrnii's cellular transformation, it could completely change how we approach medicine and healthcare.
That's mind-blowing. Seriously, a tiny jellyfish might hold the key to solving some of humanity's biggest health problems. It just shows you that even creatures that seem totally alien to us can have something important to teach us.
It really underscores the fact that all living things are connected in some way. We're all part of this giant web of life, and understanding how other organisms work, even the ones that seem totally different from us, can lead to these amazing breakthroughs.
So we might not be immortal in the traditional sense anytime soon, but studying this jellyfish gives us this little peek into a future where healing and regeneration could be way more powerful than we ever thought possible.
Exactly. And it really highlights why scientific research, exploration, and conservation are so important.
Yeah.
We have to protect biodiversity, not just for the planet, but for our own health and well-being too.
It's like every species has its own story to tell, its own role to play. And who knows what amazing secrets are still out there waiting to be discovered in the incredible diversity of life on Earth.
It's pretty exciting to think about, isn't it? There's so much more to learn and explore. That's what makes science so awesome. It's a journey of discovery that never really ends.
Well, this deep dive into the world of the immortal jellyfish has definitely been a journey for me. From its weird life cycle and regenerative abilities to its impact on human health. It's a creature that makes you question everything you thought you knew about life, death, and aging. Turritopsis Dohrnii shows us that nature is full of surprises and that even the tiniest creatures can hold secrets that could change the world.
Couldn't have said it better myself. It's a reminder to never stop being curious. Keep asking questions and keep exploring the world around you. You never know what amazing things you'll find.
So until our next deep dive, keep exploring, keep learning, and never limit that sense of wonder